Hello everyone. This video covers the Unit 1 Quiz Review version 1. Problem 1 says to convert 112 inches to yards. Well, part A, we're given all of the conversion factors that we need. We need 12 inches is 1 foot and that 3 feet is 1 yard. Here in section B, we start with what's given, which is 112 inches. We'll multiply that by the conversion factor that 1 foot is 12 inches, and then the 2 inches cancel. And then we multiply that by 1 yard is 3 feet, and then the feet cancel. And now we're left with yards. Multiply 112 times 1 times 1, which is 112 yards. And then on the bottom we have 12 times 3 is 36. And then you divide 112 by 36 to get 3.111 yards. Problem number 2 says to convert 18,762 feet to miles. In section A, we have the conversion that we need, and that's that 5,280 feet is 1 mile. In section B, we start with what's given, which is 18,762 feet, and we multiply that by the conversion factor of 1 mile over 5,280 feet. And the feet cancel. And then that is equal to 18,762 times 1, which is still 18,762 miles, divided by the 5,280, and that comes out to be 3.5534 miles. Number 3 says to convert 36 cubic feet to cubic inches. In section A, we need the conversion that 12 inches is 1 foot. In section B, we start with what's given, which is 36 cubic feet, and we multiply that by 12 inches over 1 foot. But we have to cube both of those because the feet are cubed here. Then the feet cubed cancel here and here, and then that leaves us with 36 times 12 to the third power divided by 1. When you put that in the calculator, it's 36 times 12 to the third, you get 62,208 cubic inches. For question 4, it says, list 3 best assumptions that you would make and/or facts that you would research to help you determine an estimate for the following Fermi questions. So in part A, how many tennis balls would it take to fill up the cafeteria at RHS? So I just wrote down a few things that might come to mind, but answers will vary here. So for number 1, I wrote that we need to assume, or we could assume, that no tables or furniture would be in the cafeteria. Number 2, I said that we could assume that there is space between the tennis balls, which there would be. And number 3, something that we must find out. We must find the dimensions of the cafeteria. And section B, or part B, says, how many people could fit inside the Atlanta Hawks basketball court? Again, answers may vary here, but number 1, I said we would have to find the dimensions of the court. Number 2, we could make an assumption that one person takes up 2.5 square feet of space. And number 3, another assumption is that people cannot be on top of each other. All right, for question 5, we're looking at this license plate format. The license plate is in the format of X-NNNN-XX, where all the X's represent letters and all of the N's represent numbers. But there are some conditions. It says here the license plate numbers cannot begin or end with the letter O. So that means that this first letter here cannot be the letter O. So that takes away one possibility, which means we now only have 25 letters to choose from. And it says it cannot end with the letter O either. So that means this last letter has only 25 possibilities. It also says that the second number cannot be 0. So the second number would be this N right here. So that second number cannot be 0. Therefore, we would only have 9 digits to choose from. But everything else is as we would expect. For this number here, we could use all 10 digits. For this number and this number, we could use all 10 digits as well. And then for this letter, we could use all 26. So we simply multiply all of these numbers together. That's 25 times 10 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 26 times 25. And we get this very large number. It's 146,250,000 possible license plates. Okay, number 6, it says a movie with an aspect ratio of 2.25 to 1 is shown as letterboxed image on a 62-inch 16 by 9 television. We need to calculate the height of the image, the area of the image, height of each black bar, area of each black bar, area of the television, and the percent of the screen's area occupied by the image. Okay, so first of all, it says it's a letterbox image. So in part A, I drew the picture with the 2 letterboxes on the top and bottom. We know it's a 62-inch television screen, so we have the diagonal at 62. And it's a 16 by 9 ratio for the television, so we have 16x and 9x on the bottom and on the sides. Okay, then part B, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem because we know that 16x all squared plus 9x all squared has to equal 62 all squared. So that's this line here. And then when you square everything, you get 256x squared plus 81x squared equals 3844. Add 256 plus 81 gives you 337x squared. Then you'll have to divide by 337. So now we have x squared equals 3844 over 337. Then you'll have to take the square root. So x is equal to the square root of this fraction. Put that in the calculator, and x is going to be 3.3774. Now we go to section C. We can find the television width because the television width is 16 times x, which is 16 times 3.3774, and that comes out to be 54.0384. That is the width of the entire television screen. We can also find the TV's height, which is 9 times x, or 9 times 3.3774, which comes out to be 30.3966 inches. Now let's move on to section D. Section D, we're going to find the height of the image. So we let the height of the image be h. Now we're going to use a ratio. So we know that the ratio of the image is 2.25 to 1. And the width of the image is the same as the width of the entire television screen, which is the 54.0384. So 54.0384, that ratio over the image's height h is equal to the aspect ratio 2.25 to 1. Cross multiply, and you get 2.25 times h equals 54.0384. Divide both sides by 2.25 and then put this in the calculator. So 54.0384 divided by 2.25 gives us the image height of 24.0171 inches. Moving on to section E here, we want to find the image's area now. And the image's area is its width times its height. And the width is 54.0384. And the height that we just found is 24.0171. Multiply those together, and you get an image area of 1297.8457 square inches. Move to section F here, and that's finding the black bar height. The black bar's height is equal to the height of the entire television screen minus the height of the image and then divided by 2. So the height of the television screen is 30.3966 minus the height of the image, which is 24.0171, and then you divide all of that by 2. So the black bar's height is 3.1898 inches. Let's move on to section G. We want to find the black bar area. That's the length, or the width times the height. Okay, or yeah, the width times the height. So the width is 54.0384, and the height of the black bar, which we found up here, was 3.1898. And you multiply those together. So the area of the black bar is 172.3717 square inches. Move on to section H. We can find the TV's area by multiplying its width times its height. And the width of the television is 54.0384. The height is 30.3966. Multiply those together, and you get your area of 1642.5836 square inches. That's the area of the TV. And finally, section I. Section I, we'll find the percentage of the screen's area occupied by the image. So we just figure out, take the height of the image and divide it by the height of the entire screen. The height of the image is 24.0171, and the height of the screen is 30.3966. So we divide those two numbers and we get 0.7901, which is approximately 79%. Here's number 7. A movie with an aspect ratio of 1.15 to 1 is shown as a pillar boxed image. Yeah, so just repeating that, the aspect ratio of the movie is 1.15 to 1, and it is a pillar boxed image on a 49-inch screen that has an aspect ratio of 4 to 3. So in step A, we draw the picture. We know the pillar boxes are on the left and the right side, and they're vertical. We have a screen that's 49 inches, so that's the diagonal. And the aspect ratio of the television is 4 to 3, so we have 4x on the bottom and 3x on the side. Moving on to section B, we'll use the Pythagorean theorem that says 4x squared plus 3x squared equals 49 squared. Then we'll square everything, and that turns that into 16x squared plus 9x squared equals 2401. Add 16 plus 9, you get 25x squared equals 2401. Divide by 25, so x squared is 2401 divided by 25. And then we'll take the square root of both sides, so x is the square root of this fraction. Put that in the calculator and you get 9.8. Moving on to section C, we can find the TV width and the TV height. TV's width is 4 times x, or 4 times 9.8, which gives us 39.2. The TV's height is 3 times x, or 3 times 9.8, and that's 29.4 inches. Moving on to D, we can find the height of the image. Well, because this is a pillar box, the height of the image is the same as the height of the whole screen, which is this 29.4. So the height of the image is 29.4 inches. Moving on to section E, we can find the width of the image. So to find the width of the image, we use the aspect ratio of 1.15 to 1, because that was given at the top. So 1.15 to 1, and we set that equal to the width of the image divided by the height of the image. And we know the height of the image is 29.4. So let's cross multiply. W times 1 is W, and then 2.9 or 29.4 times 1.15. Multiply that, you get 33.81, and that is the width of the image. Moving on to section F, we can find the image's area now by multiplying the width of the image times the height of the image. The width is 33.81 and the height is 29.4. Multiply those two numbers and you have 994.014 square inches. And that is the image area. Move on to section G. We're going to find the width of the black bar. The width of the black bar is the width of the whole screen minus the width of the image divided by 2. The whole screen is 39.2. The image is 33.81. We subtract those, divide by 2, and so the width of the black bar is 2.695 inches. In section H, we're going to find the black bar's area. So the area is going to be its width times its height. So we just found the width of the black bar to be 2.695. The height of the black bar is the same as the height of the whole screen, which is 29.4. We'll multiply these two numbers, and our area of the black bar is 79.233 square inches. Section I, we can find the TV's area, and the TV's area is the width of the TV times the height of the TV. The width is 39.2 and the height is 29.4. Multiply those together, so the area of the TV is 1152.48 square inches. And then section J, to find the percentage of the screen's area occupied by the image, we can simply take the width of the image and divide it by the width of the entire screen. So the width of the image is 33.81 and the width of the entire screen is 39.2. Divide those two numbers and you get 0.8625, which converts to 86.25%. Now moving to the last page, this is information about tire questions. So here we have the tire's information. We have the width, aspect ratio, height, diameter, and circumference, and that's for factory installed versus the new larger rims and tires. All right, so let's do one row at a time. All right, so for the width, we know that the number right after the P is the width. So for the factory install, the width is 265 millimeters. And for the larger rims, the width is 285 millimeters. The aspect ratio is the number right after the slash mark, which is the 70. So for the factory installed, it's 70 or 70%. And for the larger rims, it's 75%. We need to calculate the height. And we know, let me zoom in on this. The height is, take the aspect ratio, which is 70%. So that's 70% of the width, which is 70% of 265. So you multiply 0.70 times 265, and that gives you 185.5 millimeters. But they want the height in inches, so we'll have to convert it. So we take the 185.5 millimeters and we multiply it by the conversion factor. That 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters. Now we can get these millimeters to cancel each other out. Okay, we'll just do that. Millimeters will cancel each other out, and then that leaves you with inches. Now we'll multiply 185.5 times 1, which is 185.5, and divide it by 25.4 to get our final answer there of 7.3031 inches. So that would be the height of this tire. We'll do the same thing over here for the larger tire. That's 75% aspect ratio. So we multiply 0.75 times the width of 285 and we get 213.75 millimeters. We'll have to convert that to inches. So we'll multiply the 213.75 times 1 inch over 25.4 millimeters. The millimeters cancel. And so that gives us 213.75 on the top inches, and then divided by 25.4. When we divide these two numbers, we get 8.4154 inches. That's the height of the tire. On the next line, we're calculating the diameter in inches. So the diameter is the diameter of the whole tire is the diameter of the rim plus twice the height, because you have the height at the top of the tire and also at the bottom. So the diameter of the rim is the 17. We get that from this number up here. So that's 17 plus twice the height. So that's 2 times 7.3031. And you put that in the calculator and you get 31.6062 inches. All right, for the bigger tire, the diameter of the rim is 18. So that's going to be 18 plus 2 times the height. And the height was 8.4154. So we put this in the calculator and we end up with 34.8308 inches. And then the last line is circumference. The circumference of the tire, using the formula, circumference is the diameter multiplied by pi. We just found the diameter, which is the 31.6062. We multiply that by pi, and we get a circumference of 99.2938. For the larger tire, same formula, circumference is diameter times pi. Diameter is 34.8308. Multiply that by pi, and you get 109.4242 inches. Number 8 says, after one rotation of the wheel, how many inches further has the truck with the larger tires traveled than the truck with the factory installed tires? Well, the answer is the difference between the circumference of the larger and the circumference of the smaller. So you simply subtract those two circumferences. From what we found above, the circumference of the larger tire is 109.4242, and the circumference of the smaller is 99.2938. Subtract these two numbers, and so that means the truck with the larger tire traveled 10.1304 inches further. Question 9. After one rotation of the wheel, the truck with the larger tires has traveled how many times further than the truck with the factory installed tires? So when you're trying to find out how many times further, you have to divide to find the ratio. So this question mark here is the ratio of the circumference of the larger divided by the circumference of the smaller. So the circumference of the larger is the 109.4242, and the circumference of the smaller is 99.2938. We'll divide these two numbers, and so the larger truck has traveled 1.1020 times the smaller one. Number 10. Use the results from the above table to calculate the following. If the odometer reading is 100,000 miles with the larger tires, approximately what is the actual mileage? Well, the actual mileage is going to be more than the 100,000. We take the factor here, which is the 1.1020, and we just multiply that by the odometer reading. And you multiply those two numbers and you get 110,200 miles. So that's the actual miles driven. And then the question says, if the speedometer reading is 70 miles an hour, what is the actual speed? So you take 70 miles per hour multiplied by this factor, 1.1020. So the actual speed is 77.14 miles per hour. And number 11, if the truck with the larger tires is getting 14 miles per gallon, what would the mileage be with the factory installed tires? So you would think that with the factory installed tires, actually the miles per gallon is going to be less. So in this case, we have to work backwards. So here's what we know. We know that the mileage of the larger divided by the mileage of the smaller is that factor, the factor that we got above, which is 1.1020. So the mileage of the larger is 14 miles per gallon, divided by mileage of the smaller is going to be 1.1020 over 1. Now we'll cross multiply, and that gives us 1.1020 multiplied by the mileage of the smaller is equal to 14. And now we just need to divide both sides by 1.1020. So the mileage of the smaller is 14 divided by 1.1020. And that gives us our final answer. So the mileage of the factory installed is going to be 12.7042 miles per gallon. And then for number 12, it says work backwards and come up with a tire size that would give a circumference of approximately 120 inches. Well, as we go through this process, I figured out that we needed to make some assumptions because there's more than one possibility here. Well, first of all, we use the equation in part A. The equation is circumference is diameter times pi. So then in part B, we say the diameter times pi equals the circumference, which is 120. That was given. And then we can solve for the diameter by dividing by pi. So the diameter is 120 divided by pi, which comes out to be 38.1972 inches. So that again is the diameter of the entire tire. Part C, we had to make some assumptions. So we're going to assume that we have 20-inch rims. Now that assumption could be different. You could assume that you only have 18-inch rims or 17-inch rims. That doesn't matter. But you have to decide what size rims you have so that you can move forward. All right, so we're assuming 20-inch rims. So the tire height is the diameter of the tire minus the diameter of the rims, which is 20, and all divided by 2. So diameter of the tire is 38.1972 minus diameter of the rims, which is 20, divided by 2, and you get 9.0986 inches. That is the height of the tire. We move to section D. You have to assume an aspect ratio because that's not given. So I'm going to assume that we have a 70% aspect ratio. So that means that 70% of the width is equal to the height of the tire. So all we have to do now to get the width is to divide by 0.70. So the width is the tire's height, that's 9.0986, divided by the 0.70. And that gives us the width of the tire, which is 12.998 inches. Then we need to convert that to millimeters because we know that when we read the numbers on the tire, the width of the tire is always in millimeters. So to convert from inches to millimeters, we take the inches of 12.998 and we multiply it by the conversion fraction that 25.4 millimeters is equal to 1 inch. These 2 inches will cancel each other. So let's cancel those inches out. Okay, the inches cancel, and that leaves you with millimeters. You will then take your calculator and multiply 12.998 times the 25.4, and it's divided by 1, so you get your answer. And we'll just round that to the nearest whole number, so that's approximately 330 millimeters. Then in part E, we put this all together to get the official tire size that we would see on the actual tire. So we would have the P, which represents the passenger, Then the width comes next, which was the 330 that we got here. We have then the slash mark. Then we have the aspect ratio that we assumed, which was the 70%. And then we also assumed that the diameter of the rim was 20. So it would end up with R20 on the end. All right, that concludes the review for the quiz.